It's been a whirlwind of a few days. On Thursday morning, Canada's Wonderland announced that their brand new roller coaster AlpenFury would be opening on Saturday, just 48 hours into the future. AlpenFury was my most anticipated roller coaster of 2025 amusement park season. I specifically renewed my passport and got my family passports earlier in the year so that we could visit Canada this summer for this specific ride. When the announcement dropped Thursday morning, I quickly changed my weekend plans. We packed and headed straight up to Canada to check out this record-breaking coaster by Premier Rides. After waiting about 3 hours Saturday morning, and only 3 hours because I purchased the Fastlane Plus for that day, I was able to get my first ride on AlpenFury, and just like how the past few days have been a whirlwind, the ride itself is a whirlwind in its own right. AlpenFury has a height of 164 feet, or for my Canadian friends, 50 meters. The track length is 3,280 feet, or 1 kilometer. The ride has a max speed of 71.5 miles per hour, or 115 kilometers per hour. The roller coaster has 9 inversions. However, if you look up this coaster on rcdb.com, they list it as only having 7 inversions. I think this is because of the classification of the few of the elements, but for argument's sake, I will agree with the park that the ride has 9 inversions. Before we get into this review, please do me a favor and hit that like button on this video, and for those who love roller coasters like AlpenFury, please sure to give me a follow. If you are new to my channel, I always structure my roller coaster reviews around 5 separate categories, with the first one being presentation. The first thing to know about AlpenFury is how well that the ride is integrated into the main focal point of the park, Wonder Mountain. How they fit the station and coaster track into the mountain and surrounding areas feels so seamless. Every square inch was strategized and utilized. There was no room for error. The ride is themed to some sort of alpine snow sled racing through the Wonder Mountain. However, for the sake of this ride, I'd say it's a snow sled on crack. Theming is very minimal, but this is Canada's Wonderland, so I don't expect much with theming because that's not really their focal point. The most themed area of the ride is found within the cave as you dive into and blast out of, but the ride launches you through and out of the cave so fast, you barely have a moment to soak any of that in. And I kind of think that's also part of the point, because if you were to stop there, you'll kind of see some of the backstage areas, but anyways, the ride sports a very striking bright blue teal track with light blue, almost white supports. This helps the coaster stand out from the other roller coasters it intertwines with, but also nicely blends in with the sky. The train designs are not too much to take note of. The front of the train looks somewhat like a sled, but the ride is moving so fast as it flies through its layout, it's almost hard to even see the train itself unless you can observe it sitting on the brakes or in the station. For those who are wondering, these trains are slightly more roomy than the traditional Premier Rides trains. They have a slightly better lap bar shin guard combo. Overall, it feels very similar to other PR trains. The one train is orange, the other one is blue. There are snowflake and fire symbols on the flag surrounding the station, symbolizing fire and ice. As for the station, the only theming you'll find are a few posters hanging here or there, but again, theming isn't the focus, but presentation is, and Canada's Wonderland does a fantastic job, earning a 10 score. Ride intensity. This is the category where AlpenFury really shines. For those who are wondering, this is a very intense roller coaster. The ride starts off by taking a sharp right turn out of the station, immediately entering a short but punchy launch that sends you into a banked hill that dives down into the cave of the mountain. As soon as you enter the cave, you hit the coaster's second launch that is quite forceful and sends you blasting up and out of the mountain. Now, unless you're my wife, Kara, on her first ride in AlpenFury, the train stalled out in the cave. When this happens, the coaster will launch backwards out of the cave before relaunching back down into the cave before hitting the second launch successfully this time and launching you up and out. So yes, for those who are curious, you will not get evac'd if the ride gets stopped inside of the mountain. It will attempt to launch you back out and forward. So yeah, we were parent swapping because our youngest son was too small to ride the ride. So yeah, I'm jealous that she got this rare rollback backwards launch credit, and I did not. As you are flying out of the mountain, the coaster is inverting itself and twisting around through the inside top hat. Before you can gain your bearings, the ride continues twisting straight down and takes a slight bank turn to the left, traveling at its max speed, rising up into a banked wave hill that leads into a zero-G stall, leading into a series of inversions, including a dive-like element, a banana roll type element which the park is calling an ice winder roll, a double barrel roll which is called a fire serpent roll, which leads into the first airtime hill, followed yet by another zero-G roll where the ride ends with a small airtime hill that sends you into the brakes. As soon as you leave the mountain, this roller coaster is a non-stop pedal to the metal until you find yourself back on the brake run. It provides no breathing room. The inversions and airtime come one right after another, and this ride doesn't do any elements light. Every airtime moment is ejector, every inversion is snappy. A lot of people are comparing this coaster to Maverick at Cedar Point, which I wholeheartedly agree with because it's another launching coaster. But I honestly think AlpenFury more closely aligns with I-305, which is now Pantherion at King's Dominion, because of its intensity. After riding Pantherion, you feel like you need to take a moment to breathe because you just completed a workout, and that's how I felt after riding AlpenFury. The other closest comparison I can think of is Steel Curtain at Kennywood Park. However, Steel Curtain takes its elements a bit more in stride, while AlpenFury takes no quarter. I was able to ride this roller coaster twice thanks to the Fastlane Plus, but the layout comes at you so fast that it's really hard to soak in the elements and determine which stands out as the best. AlpenFury earns another 10 score, this time in ride intensity. Fun factor. Judging if a roller coaster is fun or not is always subjective. I think AlpenFury is going to have a wide range in opinions on this topic. The coaster is definitely fun, but I think some will enjoy it more than others. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some coaster enthusiasts label it as their new favorite coaster, while others will simply see it as a fantastic supporting attraction among the collection found at Canada's Wonderland. While I'm sure a section of the general public will simply find AlpenFury too intense of a ride. To enjoy AlpenFury, you need to be an active rider. This is not a roller coaster you can simply strap in and go for a ride. It's going to toss you around through those elements, and if you aren't prepared, it can be very jarring. Because I think how long you have to wait in line for a roller coaster plays into how much you can enjoy it, let's talk operations. As much as I think this coaster provides a great fit to Canada's Wonderland, the capacity of this ride does not stand up to the crowds this park welcomes on a daily basis. From what I can gather, this park is the most visited seasonal amusement park in the world. With that fact in mind, opening a roller coaster with AlpenFury's capacity type seems a little odd. When the ride is on point, I was able to track a dispatch about every 95 seconds. That leaves us with about 38 cycles an hour, and with each train holding a max of 18 passenger, that gives us 684 riders per hour. To put things into perspective, Behemoth, Yukon Striker, and Leviathan all have an output of over 1,000 riders an hour, a feat that AlpenFury will never be able to achieve. In other words, expect long lines, especially for the remainder of this year. I was there on opening day, and the regular queue was averaging about a 6-hour wait. And the next day it wasn't really that much better. If you can't handle a long line and have some extra cash to spare, the Fastlane Plus will shorten that time, but the best I was seeing it do for Fastlane Plus holders was about 1 hour, and at the beginning of the day, it was much longer than that. There is a single rider line, but don't expect to simply waltz onto the ride using this option. Some were waiting over 2+ hours using this line, but your experience may vary throughout the year depending on the day and operation. In other words, how the ride ops are utilizing that line. More on that in a minute. Since we're talking about the line, let's talk about the actual queue. The regular queue snakes around behind the roller coaster station. It's very much out of sight, leaving many guests completely shocked to see just how much more queue they needed to wait through before starting up the steps that lead into the station. Almost the entire standby queue stands out in the full sun with no shade, and yes, you will be waiting there for hours. For reference, the Fastlane Plus line is almost entirely shaded as it snakes under the station. Further, on opening day, there was only one misting fan in the corner of the very long queue. The day I was there, temps reached up into the 90s Fahrenheit and heat advisory was in effect. Needless to say, the regular line was brutal and people were passing out in it. If you're going to be in the standby queue, be sure to bring water with you and some sort of shade, like an umbrella if you can. I'll note AlpenFury does utilize the same loose item system that Yukon Striker has. There are boxes that you can put small items in, cell phones, fanny packs, water bottles, before you board the train. Then the box is lifted up and over the station, lowering back down on the other side for you to retrieve your items after you ride. If you have anything larger than a fanny pack, you will need to rent a locker prior to entering the line. Back to the standby queue, I find it very odd that Canada's Wonderland did not add any shade to AlpenFury's queue. And this leads me to my greatest takeaway impression of the ride. It simply was not ready to open quite yet. I was there the day prior to opening day and they were still painting the queue and the roller coaster track, setting things up and training the staff. The ride ops were feverishly learning the ride and seemed flustered all day on opening day, but again, that's kind of goes with par when opening a roller coaster, leading to them sending trains with empty seats and entire empty rows, despite having a full queue and the single rider line. Even the handicap accessibility elevator is not complete yet. In other words, if you cannot climb stairs, you cannot ride this roller coaster as of right now. All of this together really leads me to believe that Canada's Wonderland truly was not ready to open AlpenFury this past weekend, which is probably why we got such a short window of time from opening day announcement and opening day itself. But again, that's just my speculation and I would love to know the details of how it all went down. Now to clarify myself though, when I say that the ride wasn't ready to open, I do not mean that AlpenFury is not safe to ride. No, this ride is perfectly safe to ride, it's passed all the inspections. What I'm really meaning, the park probably could have used a few extra days or maybe a week or so to get all the extra details in order. But again, that's probably par for course with almost every new roller coaster that opens. Taking all of this into consideration, Fun Factor gets a score of 7. Originality. At first glance, AlpenFury seems like any other launching roller coaster, 2 launches, inversions, airtime. We've all done this before. However, the pacing on this ride is unlike any other roller coaster I've experienced. From the moment you leave the station until you're on the brake run, it's non-stop action. Even the moments you would assume to be dull are deceivingly more intense than you would expect. Watching this ride being constructed and the videos that the park put out, I was assuming that the first launch and dive down into the mountain would not be very intense, but simply a means to get you to the more intense launch through the cave. This is definitely not the case. From the moment that the train leaves this station and takes that right-hand turn, this coaster is balls to the wall crazy. Again, I expected the ending of the ride to be more drawn out elements and airtime, but it really surprised me with just how intense the ending was. The ride layout itself, how would I put it? Twisted. You are flipped upside down constantly and you will have no idea where you are going next. Right now it holds the record for the most inversions on any launching roller coaster and ties with Steel Curtain at Kennywood for the number of inversions in North America. Now, there are some that say Steel Curtain only has 8 inversions, and I've already mentioned RCDB lists AlpenFury as only having 7 inversions. But these are semantics and my personal opinion is that both coasters have 9 inversions. I touched on this already, but the way that this roller coaster is intertwined with the mountain and the 3 other roller coasters is really something to see. The coaster itself stands out amongst anything else in the park, and dare I say, any other launch coaster I've been on before. Originality gets a score of 10. Ride smoothness. Unlike some of the other launching coasters I've ridden this year, like Rapterra, AlpenFury is butter smooth. Yes, you have to be an active rider on this attraction because it hits its elements fast and hard, but there are no rough transitions on this ride. As for the seats, they're basically a slightly upgraded version of the Skyrocket model trains. These are slightly roomier, and bonus feature, there are no seatbelts or comfort collars. I find the seats very comfortable, but how the lap bar shin guard combo hits you really depends on your height and size. Some riders will say that the ride feels great, while others, including myself, find the lap bar to dig into my thighs. Which, to go back to Fun Factor, that kind of plays into my Fun Factor score as well, as why I have it down to a 7. Ride smoothness gets a score of 9. The final technical score comes to 9.2. This means AlpenFury falls into my great to fantastic category. This roller coaster was my most anticipated attraction of 2025, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. Was it my favorite new ride of 2025? No, I still prefer Stardust Racers over it, but in a pool full of roller coasters that have been heavily focused on airtime, it's nice to experience something that takes a different path. AlpenFury fits in nicely with the lineup at Canada's Wonderland and is unlike any other attraction in the park. I know I've already said this, but this is a one-of-a-kind roller coaster. Its closest comparison is Maverick at Cedar Point, but I think mostly the last third of Maverick, and that's the entirety of this ride. In some other ways, I feel like it relates more to Pantherion. Both coasters are very fast-paced and aggressive attractions that have no dull moments. However, where I think AlpenFury will exceed over Pantherion is its re-rideability. If there's one thing we know about Pantherion, is it's so intense that it's mostly too much for a lot of people. As for AlpenFury, it really pushes you to that threshold, but this is a ride that you could ride again, and I think it will have a larger demographic that are going to like it. For my personal score, I'm going to come in a little lower at an 8. Bottom line, I can appreciate a roller coaster like this, but it's not my particular favorite cup of tea. Canada's Wonderland was a new theme park for me to visit, so every roller coaster was a new credit. At the end of the day, I found that I enjoyed a few of the other roller coasters over AlpenFury, but that shouldn't deter from how good this roller coaster is. As I said already, there will be some that will enthusiastically claim AlpenFury as their new #1 roller coaster, while others will simply see it as a solid supporting roller coaster earning a spot in their top 5 or top 10. Maybe I'm just boring vanilla kind of a guy, but I really like my floater airtime and nice drawn out elements. I know that there are other coaster enthusiasts out there that prefer the experience of being a passenger on a fighter jet with the top down being tossed around like a rag doll. I hope this is the beginning to a new era for premier rides, and we see more roller coasters like AlpenFury from this manufacturer in the near future. The big question, is AlpenFury worth the visit to Canada's Wonderland? I would hope this review would tell you the answer, which is yes. If you have never been to Canada's Wonderland, you have plenty of reasons on top of AlpenFury to visit this park. And if you have been to Canada's Wonderland before, AlpenFury on its own brings enough to the table to warrant a visit. As I said earlier, this really feels like a one-of-a-kind experience. Just be prepared to wait through a long line to get your ride. Well, that's my review of AlpenFury. For those who have had the opportunity to ride this roller coaster, tell me all about it in the comments. Until next time, this is Extreme Thrills.